Is that really you, Grandpa?
Listen, kid, you're not the only one who was young once.
Where's Grandma?
I didn't even know her then. There she is in the other pictures. This was taken in 1916. I didn't even meet her until 1920.
Which one is Grandma?
The prettiest one, kid. The prettiest girl in the city. There we are in 1921, falling in love. We got married in 1922, and we lived happily ever after.
That's your mother and father.
Right. And here are some of their brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles. Before the 1920s, families used to be bigger than they were in my time, especially families that came over from Europe. Customs were changing. For instance, when we got married, we pretty much led our own life. My parents had stayed closer to their families. After this picture, most of my brothers, sisters, and cousins moved to other cities. Your grandma and I were the only ones who stayed in town. My mother and father didn't like the idea of their family splitting up. But city life was changing in the 20s. Grandparents stopped being an important part of the family. They just got left alone to grow old and lonely. But what are you going to do? So your grandma and I got married. We eloped. And I can't say that it made our families very happy. You see, in our families, most marriages used to be arranged. And your grandma's dad wanted her to marry somebody else. That was how he got married back in the old country. But in our time, it was love or nothing. So we met, fell in love, and got married. And everybody was happy. Especially me. Of course, we were both Presbyterians. Your grandma was confirmed in the same church we went to after we were married. So even though we eloped, we were pretty conventional in some ways. Guess who?
I don't know.
That's my eldest, your mother.
That's Mom?
That's right. Miss Butterball, 1923. And here's our happy family.
Did you still live with your mother and dad?
Not us. They wanted us to, like they had when they were young. But we had to have a place of our own, a flat on the second floor. Things were changing in the city. The family next door were closer friends than most of our own relatives. And we didn't have many kids, just your mom and your Aunt Phyllis. I'd had 6 brothers and sisters. To visit my folks, we'd hop a streetcar. For a nickel, you could go anywhere you wanted in the city. And for a nickel, you could make a phone call. Yes, we did have telephones in the 1920s. Cars, too.
What kind was it?
A Maxwell. Isn't it a beauty? Cost me $200 used.
Wow.
Cars changed our whole way of life. My dad used to work close to the house, used to come home for lunch. But with a car, I could get a better job, even if it was far from home. I worked downtown in a big office.
What did you do?
A lot of paperwork, mostly. I never could explain it to your mother when she was little. And she couldn't watch me work like I'd watched my dad at the hat shop down the street. At work, I had friends your grandma never knew. Of course, she had neighborhood friends that I didn't know. She took care of the children and the house. It was expected of her. Shopping kept her busy. The grocery store, the five and dime, the meat market. No supermarkets in those days. But housewives used to buy from a lot of people who came to their homes. The milkman, laundryman, fruit vendors, knife sharpeners. In the 1920s, women started using more appliances. Housework got easier. The work that kids did, too. Your mom's cousin Phil didn't work nearly as hard as I had to when I was a boy. Mostly, he was in school.
Is that his class?
It sure is. There was a big push for education in the 1920s. For the first time, they had to go to school until they were 15 or 16 years old. Teachers did some jobs parents used to do, like teaching kids patriotism and moral values. Education changed our kids, and I guess we accepted the idea they were going to be different from us because of it. A lot of immigrant families liked the idea. They wanted their children to be Americans. They wanted them to learn the new language and new customs. When your mother went to school, she got a better education than I did. Even in grade school, we knew she was going to go on to college. We were proud of her. Religion was more important to our parents than it was to us. Sure, we went to church, but it was for social reasons as well as religion. To be with our friends and to meet new people. We were in the jazz age, and everyone wanted a good time. You know, it was against the law to sell alcoholic drinks then. But people broke the law. A lot of people drank. Even women.
Did Grandma?
I'm afraid so. Women started kicking up their heels in the 20s. Clothing got bright, skirts got short. They wore lots of makeup and bobbed their hair. We called them flappers. Young men, we were looking for new styles too, new ways to do things. And we made the whole country sit up and take notice. With cars available, you can imagine the sort of things that were going on. It was quite a decade. Crime increased. The big criminals became heroes to some people. People were looking for excitement, for new experiences. At the theater, those Ziegfeld girls dazzled people. They were beautiful and their costumes were fantastic. In the movies, men and women kissed each other in close-up shots. Public morality was changing pretty fast. The whole country was looking for a good time. Having fun was important. Betty Boop became famous. All the wise guys smoked cigarettes and used the latest slang. Oh, you kid. 23 skidoo. You're the cat's meow. There were crazy contests. Men sat on flagpoles for days and days. Stunt flyers gave barnstorming air shows. Those were fast-moving times, really fast. But they didn't last. Suddenly, in 1929, the stock market crashed. People were thrown into poverty. Their life savings were wiped out. People were out of work. Money was scarce. There was trouble everywhere. Our city and the whole country plunged into the worst economic slump in history, the Depression. Your grandma and me, too. The 20s started out good and ended bad. But you know, if it weren't for the 20s, this country wouldn't be what it is today. It was then that the immigrants, like my own dad, became Americans. It was then that our ideas of marriage and family life changed to something like they are today. It was then that our ideas about education and work really began to change. And do you know something? It all happened in the 1920s.